Have you ever noticed it?
While you're finishing dinner or getting ready for bed, dozens of aircraft are taking off toward Europe, crossing the Atlantic in complete darkness. And that raises a very valid question. If flying during the day seems more comfortable, more intuitive, and more pleasant for passengers, why do most airlines choose to make that journey at night?
The answer has nothing to do with safety.
It has everything to do with money, strategy, resource optimization, and billions of dollars on the line.
Because crossing the Atlantic isn't just about moving people from one continent to another. It's about making a Boeing 787, a 787, an Airbus A330, or an A350 generate the maximum possible revenue for every single hour it spends in the air. To understand this, you have to start with one fundamental fact. The North Atlantic is one of the most lucrative air corridors on the planet.
Between North America and Europe alone, tens of millions of passengers travel every year, generating billions of dollars in revenue for airlines. Routes like New York to London, Boston to Dublin, Toronto to Lisbon, or Atlanta to Amsterdam are absolute gold mines.
The route between JFK and Heathrow, for example,
has historically been one of the most profitable in the world.
With airlines like British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, American Airlines,
Delta and United competing fiercely for it.
During peak season, a single business class seat can cost between $3,000 and $8,000 round trip. First class can easily exceed $10,000, and on aircraft like the 787-9, the 787-10, or the Boeing 747-300, a single flight can generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in gross revenue. So if the business is that lucrative, why leave at night? Because the real value isn't just in the flight itself, it's in the moment you land. The vast majority of business travelers want to depart in the afternoon or evening from North America, sleep during the crossing, and arrive in Europe first thing in the morning.
A flight leaving New York at 8 p.m. can touch down in London around 8 a.m. local time. That allows the passenger to go straight to a meeting, make a connection, or simply start their day without losing a single productive hour.
Now imagine the opposite, departing at 10 in the morning and landing in Europe late at night. You arrive exhausted, with fewer transport options, more expensive hotels, and an entire day wasted. For the premium traveler, that experience is far less appealing. And that matters enormously, because airlines earn a disproportionate share of their profits from those premium cabins. British Airways, for example, has historically depended heavily on corporate travelers on the North Atlantic. Although business and first-class seats take up considerably less space than economy, they can generate more than 50% of a flight's total revenue,
even when they represent less than 20% of the passengers on board. That gap is massive. But there's another equally important factor: aircraft utilization.
A new Boeing 787 can cost between $240 and $330 million, depending on the variant. And a 777 or 777 can be even more expensive, depending on the model and commercial agreements. Even with the significant discounts airlines negotiate, these are brutal investments. Every hour that aircraft sits on the ground is money. It's not generating. That's why airlines aim to keep their fleets in the air between 12 and 16 hours a day. A 787 can operate a transatlantic flight overnight to Europe, spend the minimum possible time on the ground, and return to America during the day. A 777, especially on high-demand routes, does exactly the same thing, but with more passengers, and in many cases, more cargo in the hold. The aircraft works almost non-stop. And here's a key technical difference. The 787 was designed with efficiency in mind. It burns approximately 20% to 25% less fuel than previous generations. Like many 767s, or equivalent older models, depending on configuration, that makes it an ideal option for transatlantic routes where demand is solid, but not necessarily massive. The 777, on the other hand, remains a beast for high-density markets and premium cabins. It can carry more passengers, more cargo, and generate higher revenue per flight, though its fuel consumption is also higher than the 787s. On routes where filling premium seats and maximizing cargo justifies it, the 777 is still king. But where flexibility and efficiency take priority, the 787 shines. As a reference point, a 787 can burn between 5 and 5.8 metric tons of fuel per hour, while the larger 777 variants consume considerably more, depending on weight, route, and conditions. Over daily operations, that difference can translate into millions of dollars per year. Now, not all transatlantic traffic is nocturnal.
Daytime flights do exist, but they follow a different logic. Flights from London to New York during the day are common, for instance, because the aircraft travels westward and gains time thanks to the time zone difference.
A flight departing London at 2 p.m. can land in New York at 5 p.m. local time, allowing the passenger to still make use of part of their day. But heading in the opposite direction, toward Europe, the clock works against you because you lose hours crossing time zones. That's what makes nighttime almost a perfect commercial tool for eastbound routes. The jet stream also plays a major role. These upper-level winds can exceed 150 or even 200 km/h heading east, helping to reduce flight time and fuel burn. A trip from New York to London can take between 6 and 7 hours, while the return journey can stretch to 8 or 9. Less flight time means less fuel, fewer crew hours, and less wear on the aircraft. And speaking of fuel, it can represent between 20% and 30% of an airline's total operating costs, depending on oil prices. A single Atlantic crossing can burn tens of thousands of dollars worth of jet fuel alone. That's why routing, altitude selection, and meteorology are an obsession for operations teams. This is where the NATI tracks come in. The North Atlantic tracks. Invisible aerial highways drawn across the ocean and updated daily based on weather conditions and wind patterns.
They're not fixed routes, they shift constantly to maximize efficiency and safety.
At night, especially heading toward Europe, a perfectly orchestrated sequence unfolds. Dozens of aircraft from Delta,
United, Air Canada, Lufthansa, Air France,
KLM, Iberia, TAP, Air Lingus, and many others, flying 787s, 777s, A330s, and A350s,
merge into coordinated waves along these oceanic tracks.
It's not coincidence. It's global planning on an industrial scale. And European airports love it. Those early morning arrivals feed an entire chain of continental connections. A passenger arriving from Chicago, Montreal, or Washington can seamlessly connect to Barcelona, Milan, Istanbul, or Johannesburg.
If they landed too late, those connections would be missed, and with them, millions in revenue for airlines and airports alike.
Aer Lingus and Icelandair have built entire business models around this principle, using their hubs in Dublin and Reykjavik to optimize connections between America and Europe. Meanwhile, giants like British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, Delta, United, and American combine different aircraft types based on route demand, from the A330 and A350 to the 767, 777, 787, and even the A321XLR on more specific markets. And the human factor can't be overlooked. Sleeping on a plane is never perfectly comfortable, but modern long-haul aircraft have dramatically improved the experience through better pressurization,
higher cabin humidity levels, and designs specifically engineered to reduce fatigue. All of that makes overnight flights far more bearable, even for demanding passengers. Airlines even design the entire onboard service around it. A quick dinner after takeoff, dim lighting, quiet cabin, a light breakfast before landing. The goal is for the passenger to arrive rested and ready to work or make connections. And there's one more element that often gets overlooked: cargo. Many of these transatlantic flights don't cross the ocean with passengers alone. In the holds travel pharmaceuticals, electronics, industrial spare parts, perishable goods, and urgent freight. On many routes, that cargo can represent a significant portion of the total profitability of the flight. So the question was never whether they can fly during the day. Of course they can. The real question is why, on many routes and especially heading east, nighttime is simply the most profitable, most strategic, and most efficient option for everyone involved. At this scale, aviation leaves nothing to chance.